Welcome to the Dirty Side of Leadership podcast with Ron and Kristin, where leadership meets entertainment. This podcast features stories with names and certain aspects that have been changed to keep submissions private. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to the 50th episode of the Dirty Side of Leadership podcast, where leadership meets entertainment. Ron and I wanted to do something special for this episode, so we decided to use number 50 to invest in your health and wellness. We are calling this episode The Truth About Fitness and Nutrition. There are so many misconceptions, especially around the food industry. This episode is intended to empower you with the truth that will aid you in making decisions for your ultimate health and longevity. Ron, congratulations on a successful podcast thus far.
Thank you, Kristin. And I'm so grateful, even though I give you a hard time, that you were willing to come on this journey. And by the way, I won't stop giving you a hard time, but
yeah, please don't.
Anyway, from the outset, we wanted to enhance our listeners' leadership skills, but also have them have a good time. And a lot of the reports that I've gotten back, people are enjoying the podcast, but they do like our banter. They like the fact that we're trying to learn, but have a little fun along the way. And God knows in my career, I heard so many dry presentations that that's kind of my mantra, is to make training fun. So let me ask you a question. What was your biggest, I know you had already done a online show. What was your biggest surprise about the podcast, or what have you learned? Like, what do you like about doing a podcast?
Well, the coolest part of what we do is, I wasn't sure at first if my existing base, my followers and subscribers, were going to go about leadership, right? And so my biggest takeaway has been how many people, just this across the board, that we resonate with, that our message is not only interesting, but beneficial. And I'm talking from blue collar workers, the heartbeat of America, to executives and the C-suite. We are resonating across the board. And, to your point, I do think a lot of it has to do with, we don't take ourselves too seriously. We really do bring that entertainment piece, and we're vulnerable. And I feel like everyone can relate with that.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I certainly hope so. And I was hoping all of your followers would follow me. So I'm waiting out there, folks. I haven't seen you yet, but.
So it's important to note, let's get back into the episode here, that all aspects of this episode were taken from another one of our dynamic presentations at Forward Operations. And I want to give a special thanks to Mark Ryan. He's our resident fitness and nutrition expert, one of the associates here. And remember, if you'd like to host one of our team members to provide this presentation, or one of our other dynamic training programs or talks, visit Forward Operations, for the number WARD Operations, and let's chat.
Yeah. Mark was very instrumental in putting this together. And so it's been really cool. I've learned so much from him, and I have so much fun doing this presentation. I pass out labels that we'll get to. It's a really cool presentation. So anyway, but before we get too deep into it, as you know, we are using a meme or a quote of the week, and you and I just kind of give our opinion on it. And this one came from one of our faithful listeners, Stephanie Oracing. And this is the quote: "I don't know why my job thinks being short-staffed means I'm going to work harder." And Kristin, I've seen that happen so many times,
right?
Where employers, I think, drag their feet in getting a replacement because the work goes on, but they sometimes don't realize the stress and the pressure they're putting on their current employees. Now, I know there's other factors, but I think Stephanie is onto something with this quote. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, and I like this quote because it's real and it's raw, and it's something that almost every workplace is facing at least some point, right? So I would say, from this, it is really important that people realize even your all-star, rock star employees are going to burn out, and they eventually, a lot of them that aren't very boisterous, they're going to just leave and not let you know that they're frustrated. And so you need to really understand that just because you're short-staffed, and let's say Stephanie has stepped up and she's just a rock star, and you're not feeling it too much on your end, that doesn't mean that she's not and could be burning out quietly, right? So I think that it's really important to actually really put some thought into this one.
Absolutely. And also let's think about the money that companies save if they drag their feet. That's a salary, that's onboarding, that's all of
Right.
that, those dynamics. I remember when we had additional responsibilities, I would try to do some things for my team. I did have the benefit of the 59-minute cards. I've mentioned those before, but people could leave 59 minutes early. And then also we could do a $100 gift card. You could only do 2 per year each employee, but I made sure that I used that up. And so there are some things you can do because there is an interim period where someone may have to take on some additional work. That's reality.
Right.
You and I don't minimize reality here, but try to do something for your staff if they're working extra hard or they're taking on additional responsibilities.
Right. And the recruiting piece, to your point, the dragging the feet, I witnessed that time and time again where managers would just track their feet on hiring. And I was the complete opposite. And I drove recruiters nuts because I'm like, let's go, process this, book this, right? And that's what you have to do. You should really your staff shouldn't be doing it for months and months on end. It should be a few weeks here, a few weeks there, where they have to work harder, but not ongoing. All right, so let's get into this important episode. So our presentation starts with a gorilla. So visualize a gorilla scratching its head and thinking, I wonder if Uber Eats delivers banana pudding. So Ron, we think a lot about food. This is as a collective, Americans in general, especially.
Yeah.
We even celebrate obesity in this nation, right? I mean, we just saw the entire staff of Sports Illustrated get fired after numerous times of putting someone who was morbidly obese on the cover. I mean, that's just the environment we're living in. Food commercials are designed to ignite our cravings. And so if you mention somebody's weight, you're labeled as a body shamer. And, there's also numerous ways to get food. We talk about Uber Eats, right? So you can get food so many ways in the United States. So if you go and look at foodindustry.com, before 2020, this is a huge difference. So before 2020, the pandemic, the National Restaurant Association estimated that there were more than 1 million restaurants operating in the United States. That's a huge number. Now, after the pandemic, it's a moving target, but as of 2023, it's estimated that there are 749,000 restaurants in total in the country. Politics aside, that's a huge decrease. But what we're focusing on here is the fact that food is so readily available to all of us here in the United States.
Yeah.
Ron, I believe you have a funny restaurant story in your book.
Yeah, I did. And when I heard you mention 1 million before 2020, I started thinking, we had a little dairy bar in the little area where I grew up, and it was the greatest thing ever. Eating out was just so major. And we would go visit relatives in another county, and there was a restaurant, a diner that we would stop. And it was the biggest deal for me. And I do hate the fact that with my daughters and people in today's world, it's not about the fact you get to eat out. It's trying to figure out which one of those annoying restaurants you want to go to. So, the whole mindset has changed. But anyway, it's just a funny story. I'll be quick. But I'd seen McDonald's commercials. And Ronald McDonald was, the craze. So I had asked my parents, I want to go to a McDonald's. I want to see a McDonald's. So one of my parents had a doctor's appointment in Kingsport, Tennessee. It's about 2.5 hours from where I grew up. So we are traveling there, and they tell me, after the doctor's appointment, we're going to McDonald's. And I mean, I saw the golden arches. I could hear the angels sing. It was this angelic choir, I'm telling you. So I walk in, and I'm in heaven. I make the joke in the book that Ronald wasn't there. He must have been out for lunch. But I did think I might see the clown. You don't know the difference when you're 9.
Yeah.
So I order a burger, fries, and I am so excited. And I'm thinking we're going to go sit down like you do in a normal restaurant. But no, we got it at the counter. So, hence the beginning of my air fryer personality. I blame it on McDonald's. I get the cheeseburger. I sit down and I take a bite, and I get mustard, which I loathed, pickles, which I hated. And I don't know. And I've talked to my parents about this. By the way, I don't know if I was 9 years old or 11 years old. We can't remember.
Yeah.
But the bottom line, I had built this up so much, I started crying. So I'm going to try to pretend I was 9.
Let's say you're 9.
I'm going to say I was 9. So anyway, I am so upset. I'm not kidding. I cannot believe the ripoff that there's no tomato, there's no mayo. That's how I always ate a burger. So my dad, God bless his heart, he goes up and orders a Big Mac. And as I say in the book, it must have been the special sauce because everything was right with the world.
That is so cute. I get it, though. It's like this big ramp up and then a letdown when it's not, especially when it's something that you don't get often at all.
Yeah. What about you when you grew up? You try to say you're from a small area, but I'm telling you, it's not like mine. But go ahead.
Not like yours. Definitely not. It's funny because when I was reading this earlier, I was like, oh yeah, no, he probably had just like a couple restaurants.
No, one.
Just literally one. Wow. No, I would say though, we could drive 15 minutes and there'd be 50 different restaurant options. And my favorite was Red Robin for sure. But I will say, growing up, we didn't have a ton of money. And so we didn't eat out that often, probably once a month or so. So it was a big deal when we were able to go. Usually it would be on a Sunday after church. But those clucks and fries at Red Robin with the ranch for dipping sauce, oh my gosh, that just made the month for me. I still love chicken strips to this day.
Red Robin, I hadn't heard that in a while.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't go there anymore. But back in the day, before I knew it was good for me or what wasn't.
Yeah.
What about you? What was your favorite?
So hands down, Tasty Freeze. Have you ever heard of that?
Oh, yes.
Well, here's the funny part. Tasty Freeze, I would go get, they had a big tea and I would get a chocolate milkshake and tater tots. And I mean, that was a gourmet meal. But here's the funny part. As you know, we have a relationship with Palmetto Media Company, Gary, with our company. He does the media. So Gary bought an RV, travels across the United States, and he's got a website, RV Nation, doing some great things. But anyway, he's really good with marketing and video editing. So when he had his RV in the Somerville area, I was driving one day near the high school and I look over and there's a Tasty Freeze. I didn't know they still existed.
Nice.
So when he and I would have business meetings, I would always say nowhere else but the Tasty Freeze because it was close to him anyway. And I would go in and I swear to you, it's the same food that I got when I was a kid. And I just flooded with memories. So that's where, before he went on in the RV and his wife, we would have lunch at the Tasty Freeze.
I love it. I love it. And that's the importance of consistency, right? Because if it was completely different than how you recalled it, it would have been a complete letdown.
Yeah.
All right. So with all these restaurants we're talking about here, well, at least where I grew up, we should have plenty to eat, which is important to our health, right? Well, check this out. So a recent human perspective study showed that 88% of adult Americans are metabolically unfit. And the culprit is simply our diet. We're eating the wrong kinds of food and the wrong quantities. And we look at things and, here's the size that a Big Mac is in France or, even England. And here's the United States. There is a size difference and there's an ingredient difference too.
Yeah.
So it's making us not only fatter, but sicker, right? So many people believe that our health is 50% diet, 50% exercise, but that is absolutely not the case. It's more like 80% diet, 20% exercise. And we all probably know or knew somebody who worked out regularly, but they looked like a schlup, right? And I'm sure you and I could still in our minds, like, yeah, I know some people like that. And that is, they might have it dialed in at the gym, but they don't have it dialed in the kitchen. And it definitely shows.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people go, this is why I work out, but I'm thinking, I don't know if that balances out for you.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's not like you can do a curl and eat a brownie, right? Like it's like brushing your teeth and eating Oreos at the same time. It does not balance out.
Yeah. So where have we gone wrong? This downward trend in health and upward trend in weight, ironically, got an assist from none other than the U.S. government, which has been on the search for a way to fix the nation's diet for some time. Backed by one dubious study, they eventually introduced the infamous food pyramid that drove a dramatic increase in the consumption of refined, unhealthy carbohydrates.
Right. Ron, okay, I want to ask you something because we're talking about, was it after World War I or World War II where the government was like, really their objective was probably after the Great Depression, but the objective was for people to be able to find food, like accessibility, right? Because we had people that were starving after the war. And that was the goal of the government was we need accessible food. Well, for accessibility, generally you need it to be highly processed so it has a shelf life, right? But that was the only focus. So I'm curious what you have to say on that aspect of it.
Yeah, but you're right on. It started after World War One, but increased after World War II. Even though there was prosperity, there was breakthroughs in science. So they began to learn how to preserve food, and the big companies basically were unregulated. And so naturally, if you can find a way to preserve your food, you're going to do it because you can just keep it on the shelf and keep making money. So, money dominated the food industry. And that's basically what happened.
Yeah, it's interesting, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, I get the objective, right? But I also, it's like one of those cases where, well, like so many things, the pendulum swung too far. And then we just completely forgot about, what about the ingredients that are causing it to have this long shelf life? What do these ingredients do to our bodies?
Yeah.
So for the first time in history, we had a government telling us what to eat, right? With the food pyramid you were just talking about, encouraging us to eat far more refined carbs and much less healthy fats and proteins. And our weight and health have only suffered from it. So the results on the nation's health and weight have been dire. Since the government first set dietary guidelines in 1977, the food industry has completely shifted the types of food they produce to our overall detriment, according to the CDC. And before I even get into that stat, I want to just say, talking about 1977, I'm sure you've seen pictures, Ron, on social media where it shows a picture from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and they say, what's different about this? Or notice anything different? And you don't see obese or morbidly obese people just walking everywhere like you do today.
Yeah, no, it's true. A quick funny side note, I don't want to minimize the content of this podcast, but we had a missionary, and I was at my church, and the church secretary had apparently gained some weight. The missionary had been gone for a year, and he said to her, "You have progressed nicely." And she finally realized what that meant, and she said his name, and she said, "That is not a compliment in America." And he explained to her, he apologized, but he said in Africa, in the village where he lived, if the wife was gaining weight, that meant the husband was prospering. So anyway, I had a great relationship with her. So when I would see her and her husband together, I go, "Ron, you're prospering." But anyway, it's another.
I think I find it fascinating. I really do. I really do. And you think about paintings back in the day. Did they paint really skinny, thin people? No, they really didn't. So I think the same mentality was back then. Like really thin people meant you have no money, right? Because you don't have enough food.
Yeah. The other thing that he always did before, now you hear it now, protein, but you didn't, like 20 years ago, you didn't hear protein hardly ever, but
right.
He would always go, "Oh, this is your protein. This is your," I think he would call it calories or something. He didn't say carbs, but they named the food by protein, not the type of meat that it was.
I see.
That
That's
was
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is. All right, back to the CDC. So according to the CDC, the weight of the average adult American today is nearly 30 pounds more than that in 77. So again, to that point, we're seeing 30 more pounds per person on average walking around. So our bodies desperately require insulin to operate properly. But our modern diet is so rich in carbs that it leaves us flooded with insulin almost nonstop. Your pancreas is not happy, I can tell you that. And when that happens, you become insulin resistant. So, it's very bad. I think we all understand this. This is where diabetes starts, right?
Yes.
It's a very bad thing indeed for our health and weight. And, a little additional information here. Research shows that more than half of adult Americans are already insulin resistant, which is growing rapidly throughout the world. The world's westernizing how they eat. Even India, which they were one of the last holdouts on eating traditional food. I was listening to a documentary recently, and they're starting to really westernize how they eat, and the disease is just skyrocketing there. So I find that really sad. So in general, insulin resistance makes almost anything that could go wrong with your body much, much worse, worsening brain health, metabolic health, heart health, and much more. Insulin resistance turns things tragic in a very short order.
Yeah. Wow. As we do a deep dive on nutrition, of course, we would ordinarily jump to fast food, but let's look at another contributor to poor health and possibly anxiety in the U.S. Before we do this, just know that we believe in freedom to eat whatever you want. If you want the big gulp, go for it. But we are giving you some advice. So, and some data, by the way. Now, let's talk about one of the most successful companies in America. Here we go, everybody. Drum roll. Starbucks. You know, back in the day, a cup of coffee was a cup of coffee, but now it's gotten to be, you know, there's hundreds of different varieties and all that. So who among us doesn't love a tasty pick-me-up from Starbucks every now and then? Not only can our go-to orders give us a burst of energy to take on the day, but the great flavor of our favorite coffee drinks also make our taste buds happier. And let's face it, there's even it got so cool about 10, maybe 12 years ago to have a Starbucks cup. Like, you were just cool. You were the in crowd if you went to Starbucks. As a matter of fact, I was in Seattle and I was going to the original Starbucks. I had a bunch of young adults in this area telling me, bring me back a tumbler. And they wanted that original logo. Yeah. So I walked in and I had tumblers all the way around the outer part of my suitcase. And I had a lot less money, by the way. None of them offered to pay, but that's another story.
Hey, bring me back remember I said I had a boss like that once. Hey, go get me lunch. I'm not going to, didn't know I was going to get paid for it, but anyhow.
Here's the thing. And you can go online and look, but some of the Starbucks drinks are absolutely terrible for your health. And they give you that 15 minutes of rush, and they're addicting. There are people, I've had people say, oh my God, I got to get to Starbucks. I got to get to Starbucks. And the infamous Frappuccinos are basically probably the lowest risk, but these drinks have a way of slowing metabolism. So in other words, you're getting fatter even though you don't know it, because your metabolism is slowing down. It doesn't beat up the food that's in your system, the other foods. It's crazy.
Yeah, it really is. And yeah, I've heard it compared to basically getting a Big Mac. Like a Frappuccino is like a Big Mac, right? Because there's so much sugar in there. You know, one of the things is if that's the only thing that is around you and everyone's going there, you can get an Americano or get a drip coffee with heavy cream, right? Like there's ways, get a black iced tea, no sweetener. So like those are my go-tos when
the Americano is what I
need
drink.
to go there.
There
That's
you
perfect.
go.
See? And actually, that one is still reasonably priced. That's what my family gets.
True.
Yeah. So there's ways around it. We're just, I think it's important that we're talking about as a collective and then empowering you to make good decisions, because there are decisions that you can make. Even if, I talked about last episode that I didn't want to rock the boat at a restaurant, right? Or maybe it was 2 episodes ago. I didn't want to send back food that was cold because I didn't want to disrupt my entire table. That same thing happens sometimes when maybe 5 of the 6 people want to go to Starbucks and you don't, but you don't want to be like, okay, I'm the one person that's going to derail where we're going. So then you have your go-tos. You know that you can make it work wherever you go.
Have a plan.
Right. Exactly. So that was what the decision-making process, the DMP.
Yes, it's part of it.
All right. To get some insight on the risks at hand and discover a few of the worst Starbucks drinks out there, we checked in with research that was put together by Sarah Chatfield, and she's a registered dietitian. She said that the calories and sugar can be a serious risk factor, and regularly, emphasis on the word regularly, right? Once in a while, not a huge deal, but regularly consuming high-calorie coffee drinks can lead to weight gain, particularly since our bodies don't register the calories we drink. Think about that. You're not chewing, so those salivatory glands aren't being kicked in for digestion, etc. So there's so many reasons not to drink calories, right? So you may be hungry again sooner after consuming high calorie drinks. I'm going to go a little bit off what we were off topic here, but the other thing is I've heard dietitians talk about like fruit juice. We all think, oh, fruit juice, it's healthy. Well, fruit was intended to be consumed in its whole. And that's including the fiber piece. So when you're just drinking basically the sugar out of the juice, that's not how your body was designed to consume it. And so that also, things like that also need to be thought about. You're supposed to have that, the meat of the fruit and the fibrous outside. So that's important to put in there also. It's not only man-made coffee drinks and sodas and all of that. So just really, what we're warning you on is just regular consumption of added extra sugar from flavored coffee drinks, soda, etc., can lead to a host of health problems like high blood sugar, inflammation, increased belly fat. Diet sodas increase your belly fat right away. It's basically like preserving your belly fat. Cavities in your teeth. I mean, none of that. You don't want any of that. So hang in there. We're empowering you with the truth, right? We said we're going to drop some truth bombs here. This is the truth about the way Americans eat and drink regularly. We're empowering you. Don't get overwhelmed. Just dial up your decision-making process so that you can take control of this. And I know, Ron, we have some detailed information on the drinks, but I think everyone's picking up what we're putting down at this point.
Yeah. Kristin, Lisa was here, as you know, before we started. She is also one of our associates and was helping me do some stuff. But I was talking to her. Her family's Italian, and she said that they weren't allowed to drink sodas, candy bars. And I'm just curious, when you grew up, but in the Appalachian Mountains where I grew up, there was no one really said, oh, that's unhealthy. And I saw a special later on where, they attributed to Mountain Dew, but there were so many cavities and things. But did your parents have a handle on nutrition when you were growing up?
Yeah. And that is something, and to this day, I think it's ingrained in me. My dad he was nuanced back in the day. Like, he's very healthy and health conscious. And what he was talking about 30, 40 years ago is everything that we're hearing today. So yes, I grew up knowing what was good for you and what wasn't. And it was just ingrained in us, which I'm very thankful for. So that is why, and I've been very open about this. That is why when I did move out of my parents' house, I gained 15 pounds because it was like the first time that I could just eat whatever the hell I wanted without judgment, without someone in my ear saying, that's highly processed and bad for you.
You were progressing. Right? Yeah,
I progressed rapidly.
You were progressive.
And my mom, this is where I love straight shooters. My mom was like, you know what? I'm going to do this challenge, eating healthy challenge. Would you like to join me? That was her way of saying. And then I can read, what people are putting down, right? Pick it up pretty easily. So I was like, oh yeah, I've gained some weight. But so anyways, did the diet with her and got it off, back on track, never regained it. But it's just one of those things. So yeah, to answer your question, yes, it was a conversation that took place regularly in my household.
Now, there was natural health, so I won't be too detrimental to my parents because we ate 80% garden food. So there was a health element. We had fresh vegetables and all that all the time. But I could, during the day, I would go play basketball and I would have, a little bit of change and I could get a Milky Way. I don't know that my mother knew it, but we found a journal that I wrote in the fourth grade. I probably shouldn't tell you this, but maybe I mentioned it, but I wrote, it's going to be a great evening. Mom bought Milky Ways, like at the grocery store.
That is so cute.
I was thrilled. It didn't take much to make me happy, Kristin.
I thought you were going to say you cried again. I wasn't sure.
Yeah. No, I haven't cried in several weeks. Let's just do this for fun. I'll just go at the beginning and the end. So let's break down. I don't want to pick on Starbucks all the time because there's so many fast food restaurants that we could go into. But the mocha cookie crumble frappuccino, say that 3 times. Listen to this, a whopping 480 calories, 24 grams of fat, 15 of them are saturated. And by the way, Kristin, I'm holding I got this just for this podcast. I'm holding up Pop-Tarts because there's always the polyunsaturated fat that throws everyone off. And what
Yeah.
people need to understand, not only is it fat, it's a preservative, it's a chemical, and has zero health benefit. So we do want to make you certified label inspectors. By the time you finish this podcast, you can pull up beside the road, celebrate, whatever you need to do. You're going to be able to at least start looking at, the labels. So anyway, back to the mocha cookie crumble frappuccino. 55 grams of sugar. I mean, that's unbelievable. 55 grams.
Yeah.
You're supposed to have 9 grams per day, an average person. Think about that.
Yeah.
Then you've got the white chocolate mocha frappuccino. That one has 430 calories, 18 grams of fat, and 53 grams of sugar. Let's keep going. The caramel ribbon crunch frappuccino has, let's see, oh my God, 60 grams of sugar in that one. Now think about it. People are buying this on a daily basis. So anyway, we could go on and on with these specialty drinks from Starbucks, but we will continue on. Some people are probably driving right now, sipping on a Starbucks, and we ruined it. Kristin, we're ruining lives.
Sometimes the truth hurts, right?
Yeah. Okay. Once again, we're not trying to make you nutritionists, and we are not nutritionists, but if you take a basic approach, it's just like a lot of things in leadership. If you're just attentive and you look at what you're doing, and you understand, the one beauty is, and this only happened recently, is companies were forced to add they had to enhance the calories on their labels. I don't even know if you knew this, but if you can see, font. Kristin, if you're watching, the font has increased. So the Pop-Tarts has 380 calories in it. And because there were a lot of elderly people could not see the labels, it's like the fine print on a contract. So now at least you can do that. So again, we're going to make you CLIs, certified label inspectors. And when you hear words like emulsifiers, that's a chemical that helps keep food from spoiling. And by the way, most of the chemicals, there's some taste that to enhance taste, but a lot of them are preservatives. It's the bottom line. So you see these emulsifiers and stuff like margarine, salad dressing. And by the way, the emulsifier has the smell. Did you know that, Kristin? It makes you, like coffee doesn't even, a coffee bean, try to smell a coffee bean. You can barely smell it. But when they add these emulsifiers in there, it gives it that coffee smell. It gives it that margarine smell, salad dressings. So a lot of it is to our senses. It gets our sense of smell. And we all know you smell something, you get hungry. Now, emulsifiers are required by law to be included on foods ingredients. So you can read those. And here, common ones are lecithin. That's soy and egg, naturally found in egg yolks and soybeans. So you look for that lecithin. But we're going to cover just a few more because, again, we don't want to make this complicated. We want you to just have a few simple things that you look for when you're grocery shopping or you're going to order food. You can look it up online, just enough to really help your health. There's something called Polysorbate, and most people have heard of it. And we said it's an emulsifier, but it's used in, by the way, the pharmaceutical industry came up with this. That should tell you everything right there.
Oh, yeah.
And for food prep. And then you've got diacetyl. It's a flavoring agent. And that's what I told you. The diacetyl is what gives things this great smell that draws you to it. And then you've got chlorine dioxide. And believe it or not, that's very similar to bleach. That's why these things are regulated. They can only put small amounts, but what they do is put it under a different name and they can put a little bit more. But think about it. When you see chlorine dioxide in your foods, in anything, you're drinking a very small quantity of basically bleach.
Yeah.
And then you've got Glucono Delta-lactose, and that's a lactone acidifier. Once again, it's a preservative. It's a seasoning to make things taste good with zero health benefits.
Right.
So, okay, enough of the science class.
No, I think it's amazing. So my cousin on the East Coast, he's a food scientist, and it's kind of crazy. So he went to school to be a chef, and then he went to school to be a pharmacist, and then he was able to combine the two and become a food scientist. And he was working for a massive, massive name brand. I won't go into it, but he had designed a couple soups, and he did not like that these ingredients that are not good for you, they didn't have to be listed because there was less than 1% in. So he
Exactly.
actually quit because of it, because he didn't feel morally that it was right. Yeah. So he started his own company. But I mean, it just shows you there is so much that we don't know that's going on. And to your point, when you mention, we have big pharma and big food, and I do believe that they work together really well to keep us fat and unhealthy, because, food, if you're consuming the standard American diet, you're going to likely end up being on some pharmaceuticals, because you're going to have some disease that's going to kick in. And if big food turned it around, then big pharma is not going to be needed as much, right?
That's right.
So if you think about, just follow the money and the answers are there. And it's funny, I posted this once and I said that there was a quote, "Let food be thy medicine." And of course, Instagram was like, that's not a real quote. So anyhow, but the point is that, like, if you eat clean for the most part, you are going to live a healthier, longer life.
Kristin, there's an old adage to shop in the outside of a grocery store. And almost any grocery store you go in, that's really true.
Yeah.
And I just went through, because you and I were prepping for this, I went through like the Little Debbie cakes and cookies and all that stuff. And then the candy aisle. And I thought, my God, it was unbelievable. So again, we want to keep this simple, but just quickly to remind people, the normal person, and I'm going to use male, female either way, because I don't want to get so complicated. We're breaking everything down on a podcast, but generally 21 to 23 grams of protein. And the interesting part is most human bodies won't even consume more than 40 grams of protein. So I remember having bodybuilders trying to eat 80 grams. And don't get me wrong, because they are lifting so heavily, they could burn more than an average person, but a lot of it was still, goes out in waste because your body can't absorb it. We should have about 27 to 36 grams of carbohydrates, 4 to 6 grams of fat. And again, not not this saturated fats and all that. You want to avoid that, but we're talking about some fats are good for you, by the way. And let's do the math here, just make this maybe fun. So one soda, let's say a can of Coke, a teaspoon is equal to 4 grams. A teaspoon, let's say, of sugar, it's 4 grams. And our bodies, I've already said this, our bodies can safely handle 6 to 9 teaspoons of sugar. So one soda has 9 teaspoons. I want you to imagine if you were sitting there with your soda, you poured it in a glass and you took 9 teaspoons of sugar. I mean, I knew someone one time that would do that to their coffee. And I used to say something. I was smart enough to know, after I got older, I started reading about medicine. I said, you better stop that. This person would laugh me off. And guess who has diabetes now? And I don't mean that facetiously, but it's true.
That sounded so, I get that. I get that. I thought you were going to say, guess who has no teeth now?
Well, I don't know about that, but they definitely got diabetes. So, that 9 teaspoons of sugar, it just blows my mind. There's no way we would do that. I'm saying no one's going to sit down and do 9 teaspoons, but yet it's already there for us. So,
right, exactly.
Of course it tastes good.
I know, right? Yeah, our taste buds have been hijacked. I was listening to a podcast recently and was talking about why there's picky eaters. I think, like, when you were growing up, you probably didn't hear about picky eaters that often. I know that I really didn't hear, oh, my kid's a picky eater when I was growing up very often at all. But now you hear about it nonstop. My son is a picky eater, and I'm trying to figure out where we went wrong. But this podcast I was listening to recently was saying, basically, because big food has hijacked your taste buds, they know how to engineer things to be consistent, to taste the same, to have the same texture. Crunch is huge, right? Like, so there's all these things that especially youth has gotten accustomed to. So when their moms or dads cook a meal, a home cooked meal, it doesn't, and it may not be consistently the same taste and texture, and it's going to vary depending on what vegetable you're eating, right? What season it is. That variability throws the kid off, and they become these picky eaters because they're so used to this ultra processed diet that is always going to taste, look, smell crunch the same, right? So it just shows it's wreaking havoc in so many areas.
And Kristin, we can't minimize the fact, and I know there's some parents listening going, you don't understand, like my kid will not eat.
No, I
And
get
I
it.
get it. I remember multiple times giving my oldest daughter, Haley, chicken McNuggets because she just wouldn't eat anything else.
Right.
So I used to joke with her and go, if you have anything wrong with you, it's all those chicken McNuggets you ate. It's not my fault. But
Oh my gosh.
it does. We do succumb to pressure like you want your kids to eat. And I want to say
Right.
this to those people who have, you've missed your diet. We talked about New Year's resolutions. We talked a lot about how the brain operates, but also you've been tricked. You've been made to acquire taste and be addicted to certain things that you shouldn't be. So I'm saying, don't be so hard on yourself. Just, take the information we're giving you and go for it again. Try it again.
Exactly. Yep. I love it. 100%. This is about empowerment, not making somebody feel beat up or beat down about something. It's about understanding, like we said in the beginning, the truth about it. Understand the truth, and then it will help open your eyes in the future.
Yeah. All right. We will move on. We won't take too much longer on this, but according to selfcheck.org, researchers followed food habits of 42,000 Swedish men over 12 years. And by the way, there's tons of studies. I just pulled this one over 12 years and found that the men who drink at least 2 sweetened beverages a day had 23% higher risk of going into heart failure. That says a lot. But just quickly, let's look at what we think healthy is. So this is what most Americans would call a healthy breakfast, okay? Cereal, the serving size is maybe 1 cup, probably 2 cups, though, the average portion. The sugar content, now, let's say you got a box of cereal. It's going to have 9 teaspoons of sugar total. Milk serving size, 1 cup, average portion is about 2 cups, about 11 grams of sugar in there. And of course, if you pour 2 cups in, it's going to be 22 grams. Honey wheat toast, 2 slices. The sugar content has 1 tablespoon of sugar. And then a 6-ounce glass of orange juice is going to equal 5 tablespoons of sugar. Now, I didn't do the math on that, but you're getting up to 40 plus grams of sugar when you think you're eating a healthy breakfast.
Right.
It's not that bread necessarily is wrong, milk is wrong, it's the way we alter it in the United States. That's the problem.
Yeah, exactly. And there's ways to avoid, like, for instance, my son's doing baseball tryouts, so he finished that. So my dad said, hey, let's take the kids out to brunch to celebrate, right? So we go to a brunch place, which, generally you're going to see pancakes and waffles and all sorts of stuff, Belgian waffles, right? So I'm trying to watch what I eat. And so I ended up ordering, what I'm showing you here is you can make decent decisions even when you're at like a Waffle House type of place. So Ron's favorite restaurant out there. But I ended up getting the Meat Lovers omelet. I am a carb watcher. So I'm not too concerned about calories or fat. I really make sure my intake of carbohydrates is less than 18 a day on average. And then I drank unsweetened iced tea. So that for me was 0 carbs. And I was able to make that decision, even though everything else on the menu is relatively unhealthy. It can be. There's ways to make good decisions, even when you're at somewhere like a Waffle House, right? So it's just understanding this.
Kristin, number 1, you just made me crave pancakes. Thanks a lot. but think about this. I did change this. You remember I said they should change alarm clocks to opportunity clocks?
Right.
Well, I did that. I'm serious about this. I didn't know I was going to say it on the podcast. So one day I went to this breakfast place and I had the big breakfast, like the Grand Slam, baby. I'm talking, the eggs, bacon, toast, and a waffle on the side or pancakes on the side.
Yeah.
So what I started doing now is I have a reward day. I reward myself for doing good through the week, working out, eating decent, and then I order whatever I want. And it's probably going to be pancakes, thanks to you. But I'm just saying we make everything negative. Cheat day. You're not cheating. You should reward yourself because you've done good things that week. So that's my new latest thing. Feel free to take that, folks.
Yeah. Hey, I like it. All right. I'll just go over quickly something that if you want to look into what you should avoid anything in a bag, right? So bagged snacks, white bread and rice. I don't know. I would say white bread, definitely. Rice, if it's a small quantity, it's not the end of the world. Cookies, canned fruit, a lot of that has added sugars. And fast foods, definitely sweetened coffee drinks and sodas. I literally have a family member, I'm going to get in trouble for this, but thin, tall, drinks soda like it's going out of style and literally looks like they have a basketball under their shirt. And it's literally inflammation from this nonstop soda consumption. And so I've always told people, if you want to make a difference, and if they're a soda drinker, I'm like, knock it off. Just don't drink it and see the huge difference that your body it'll just start healing itself. And it's wild. I like fizz every now and again. I have sparkling waters that don't have that fake sugar in it. I just do like a lemon packet where it's like literally real lemon that's dehydrated. And that satisfies my need for the carbonation, excuse me. So there's ways to make better decisions like that.
Kristin, I went to this seminar. This guy was a nutritionist, but he was a holistic nutritionist. He said all the things we're saying, but he showed white bread being digested in a human body, and it was literally like Elmer's glue in the intestines. It became pasty. And I've not eaten much. I do try to get multigrain or wheat, but it's still not much better. But I'm saying I had no idea that white bread, it's not so much, it doesn't have really any nutrients,
Right.
But it's the fact of what it can do to your intestines, and it almost serves like a glue.
Yeah, it'll bind you up.
Yep. Let's except if they're doing a bank audit and Kristin gets the runs, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I don't know if anything would stop. Not even white bread. The other day, my son, I'll just be honest, he was feeling a little constipated, and he's 9, and he's never going to listen to this, so I'm okay. But he was like, "Oh, this is horrible," and I'm like, "Look, you don't eat a lot of fiber." He's my picky one. Like, you need to not eat all of these refined carbs. So then he was like, "Okay, what is that?" I'm like, knock it off with the breads, knock it off with the pastas, right? Like, go eat an apple we're not going to cut the outside off for you. Like, you need to eat the skin, and, just different things. So sometimes people have to be quite uncomfortable before they wake up and realize what they're doing is not working.
Kristin, I've got a friend who simplifies things, and I thought this was so brilliant. It had to sink in on me, but he said, if I can't pronounce it or I don't know what it is, then it don't need to be on that label.
Right.
And the more I looked at it, I thought, oh my God, if you just pretend it's pharmaceutical and you're looking at it and you read some of these things, polyunsaturated, that sounds like a nursery song. It's not something that you're going to want to put in your body. So, I think we've covered a lot of stuff. These emulsifiers you want to stay away from, polyunsaturated, saturated, those kind of things. Look out for cholesterol if you battle that. And by the way, I have a little bit of cholesterol. I have to watch that.
That's okay. Hey, all right. See, this is where I have all this nuanced research that I'm really into. And actually, not all cholesterol is a bad thing, right? If you have to have some to be alive.
Oh, no. So, true. Yeah, mine's a little higher than it's supposed to be, I think. But anyway. I was going to cover a label, but the bottom line is look at those labels. If you can't pronounce it, if you have to do a online search for it, it's probably not good for you. And remember, the old label was so small, at least they've blown up the calories so you can see it. And what I want to challenge our listeners to do is just the next time you're at the grocery store, just have a little bit of fun and inspect some labels. How long has it been since you looked at a label? And since I took a training a long time ago, I really do look at labels. And it's okay to have a reward day. Don't listen to Kristin. Get those pancakes. But seriously, start looking at the labels. And the problem is, too, especially if you have very small children, it is an opportune time for them not to get addicted to these things that are altering the taste of food and doing it just to get them addicted from, the sodiums and all these things and sugar. I did learn when you cook, if you put enough oil, salt, and, sugar, those kind of things in your food, it's going to taste good.
Oh my
but
gosh.
it's not good for you. So,
all right, I have to. You said oil, so I have to. I'm surprised I
Okay.
didn't bring this up earlier. This is huge right now, and this is nuance, but any type of oil, you need to look and see what oils are being used. So seed oils are highly inflammatory in your body. So stick to the olive oil, extra virgin olive oil. Avocado oil is okay, but all the vegetable oil, the rapeseed oil, all of that is highly inflammatory in your body. So steer clear. And there's so much research out there on it, and it is in everything. So start reading labels and avoid all of those seed oils.
Yeah. When I grew up, my grandmother always had bacon grease and lard. Do you know what
There you
lard
go.
is?
Isn't it just fat rendering?
It's just fat rendering, I think.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, she would cook with that all the time.
It's
I never see
refined
anything
fat
like that
rendering, I
anymore.
believe. Yeah. No, I mean, and that's something they told us, oh, that's horrible. Go with vegetable oil. Sounds so healthy, right? Vegetable oil. And highly inflammatory. Motor oil going through your arteries. So
Kristin, in summation, we
Yeah.
wanted to do this episode because we really do want to help our listeners. And this also inspires us. I've said one of the things we didn't talk about the podcast is I learn a lot. Chris and I have saved all of our notes, by the way, and there's some more courses that we're going to build and presentations that we will be drawing from some of the notes that we pulled. But the bottom line is we want you to be healthier, and everyone knows if you don't feel well, you're not going to reach your goals. You know,
Right.
from sleep to diet to exercise to all these things, stress levels, and that's what we want. So consider number 50 a gift to you because we're so grateful for you supporting us, and maybe just take a little additional step and start looking at those labels. And also, we didn't talk a lot about it. You mentioned it, Kristin, but for me, it used to be portion control. I used to feel like it was a sin to leave some kind of food on my plate. And I remember this.
That's upbringing.
Yeah, no, I heard this guy say his mother used to always tell him, now this was many years ago, he would go, or she would go, son, eat that. They're starving in China. And he said one day, you know, he had a belly, he rubbed his belly, and he said, I asked myself, how did this help the Chinese? So anyway, portion control has been, I eat generally healthy, but I've had to work on the portion control, and it has helped. Now, I do have natural metabolism. I don't gain weight like some people probably, but I can tell a difference as I get older. I can get a little belly here. So portion control has been the biggest breakthrough for me. And then more water. I'm really trying to work on that since we talked about our resolutions, Kristin.
Right.
Final thoughts.
No, this has been great. It really has. And it's so important. And nothing tastes as good as being healthy feels.
Ooh, that's a great quote to end on. All right, everybody. Have a great week. Be the leader you're meant to be.
We'll see you next week.
The Dirty Side of Leadership podcast is brought to you by Forward Operations. If you'd like to book Ron or Kristin for speaking events, training, or executive coaching, visit forwardoperations.com. Be the leader you're meant to be.